It's a red wave here in Alaska. Based on unofficial results, it appears that not only is the state's next governor a Republican, but leadership in the House and Senate will be too. So Mr. Babcock, the chairman of the Republican Party, and Jay Parmalee, executive director of the Democratic Party, join me now here on set to talk about these results. And Mr. Babcock, I want to start with you because right now Republicans have the lead on 23 seats in the House. That's 2 more than necessary to hold a majority. But we saw something similar 2 years ago, and some of those Republicans broke ranks. They joined the Democratic side and formed a coalition. What makes these results different?
Well, these results were a concentrated effort at actually increasing the number of actual Republicans, and we do not count in that 23 Gabrielle Ledoux. So 22 is what we think that we have, and I hope that they can organize. So just one
more than the 21 necessary.
That's right.
And I actually want to play a clip for you because I spoke to a Republican lawmaker who says she's been part of this effort, and she's feeling really optimistic about the results tonight. Let's listen to what she has to say.
So even with the absentees, some of them are close, but I don't see anything changing. They work the absentees really hard. They usually sway our way, so hard work pays off.
Now, she told me that she spoke to all of these Republicans in the lead right now, and they all assured her they would want to form part of a majority. Jay, do you think that there is any chance that some of these Republicans could be persuaded to team up with Democrats?
Well, I think there's always an opportunity. Listen, here's the deal. These election results are not that dissimilar from 2 years ago, and there's still a couple races where we do need to watch and all the absentees to be counted in the question ballots. For instance, at least on the state Senate side, there's one seat that's actually only 11 votes off. So let's wait and get all the votes counted. A lot of phone calls are happening, meetings are happening over the next day or so. I think it's just too early to tell exactly the way this is going to play out. But the numerical advantage would give it to the Republicans. But the numerical advantage gave it to the Republicans 2 years ago. So let's just see where this is and let our legislative leaders sort of work this out over the next day or so.
I want to ask you both about one race in particular, and Tuckerman, you mentioned it earlier, Representative Gabrielle Ledoux in House District 15. And it's rare that you guys both agree on something, but you both wanted to unseat her. She's the incumbent there, and of course on the GOP side, that was because she caucused with Democrats previously. And so despite all of that, she still held on to the seat. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's hard to win with the write-in, and the Democrats were put in a bit, well, I'll let Jay speak to that as far as what the Democrats' dilemma was, but I look at Ledoux barely getting, she's not even at 40% of the vote. So 60% of her district said, we're done with you. And that means a lot to me. There's a majority of her district that does not want her kind of politics, doesn't want her kind of aggressive, whatever she's done with those votes in the primary. I don't think that's over yet.
Jay, do you think there's any chance she's going to be caucusing with Democrats this time around?
I don't know the answer to that question, because again, those are discussions held by individual legislators, not often with party leaders. Secondly, we had a Democratic candidate in that race. It was interesting in that Ledoux caucused with the Democratic majority. And we had a good candidate. It was a very close race. There's still, so it's close as is, and there'll be some more absentees counted there. But bottom line is we just have to still wait and see where these individual legislators sort of work out when it comes to organization.
What we're really looking at, one of the 3 who caucused with the Democrats, to his credit, ran as a Democrat but was defeated. The co-chair of the House Finance Committee, Paul Seaton. That was a big victory for the Republicans. And then the West Anchorage seat.
We're running as a nonpartisan. Right?
Well, he's registered as a nonpartisan, but he's the Democratic Party nominee. So he's on the ballot as a Democrat Party nominee. And that district did not want to reelect him for a whole host of reasons. But the West Anchorage district also was a very good test of the Democrats' petition candidate and the new Republican majority. And we'll still see how it pans out in Fairbanks. But if Bart LeBon picks up Kawasaki's seat, then that gives a solid 21 of the Republicans who want to caucus as Republicans. And I'm sure that they'll reach out to anyone else interested in joining them. But as Jay said, that's a decision that the elected members make, not the party.
Sure, and we'll be watching that closely. Well, we have to go to a break right now, but we're going to be coming back to this discussion. We're going to be analyzing the results in the governor's race here with the leadership on both sides of the aisle. Stay with us. Your election coverage continues. Here's a look at House races for Districts 20 through 23. Mike Dunleavy has declared victory in the race for governor. The Republican ends a nearly year-long campaign for the seat. His opponent, in contrast, jumped in June. Joining me now to talk about that and other dynamics at play are Tuckerman Babcock, chair of the Alaska Republican Party, and Jay Parmley, executive director of the Alaska Democratic Party. Thank you both for being here. So, Jay, what about that? How much of a role do you think that the length of the campaigns played in this race?
Oh, I don't know that the length of the campaign played as much a role in this race as just the interesting dynamics of this race. This campaign, you can't really talk about a gubernatorial campaign being sort of normal or average in Alaska, but here you had a three-way race for much of the summer, a governor dropping out just weeks, 2 weeks ago. All of these dynamics are at play, and I think you have to just sort of put it all in the package and go, this all had an impact. And if anything, I'll say that for Dunleavy being in the race a year probably helped him in that regard.
And what do you think, Tuckerman?
Well, I think it helped. It helps to have more opportunity to meet more people in Alaska, even if you're a well-known former U.S. Senator, as Mark Begich is. But what really, a number of things for Mike Dunleavy, and one of them was the Mat-Su borough came out in large numbers, and they gave him huge margins. And so Sullivan won his seat against Begich for the U.S. Senate. His margin per district in the Valley was around 2,000 to 2,300. But Mike Dunleavy's is 3,000 to 3,500. And you add that up over 6 districts, it begins to build a pretty good lead. And he did well in rural Alaska, too. And he didn't carry rural Alaska, but he was a lot closer to Mark Begich than previous elections. And to his credit, he also carried areas of Southeast and swept the Kenai. A strong candidate, statewide candidate.
And we should note that Democrat Mark Begich has not actually conceded the race yet. Jay, at this point, do you think there's any way that this could flip these numbers?
No, it's tough, but there's a reason for that. It isn't because the numbers may suddenly change. That is hard to see. It's the premise that we actually believe that every vote should be counted. There are still some precincts. We don't quite know where they all are, but many of them are rural. That's really important that we say to everyone who votes, their vote matters, their vote counts. And it's really more of a respect for the counting process than it is like a nod to, gosh, there's enough votes out there to flip the election. There's probably not, just the way we can sort of look at where these votes are coming from.
Well, on the Republican side, Dunleavy, he received quite a bit of criticism, particularly from Governor Walker, about not showing up to some debates statewide, including some he'd RSVP'd to. Do you think that was a smart strategy on his part? Well,
I think that the flip side of that was it a smart strategy of Governor Walker to try to run as a petition candidate and avoid all the debates in the primary? Was it a smart strategy for Mark Begich to file on the last day? There's all sorts of issues and strategies. In the end, Mike Dunleavy participated in far more debates than any of the other candidates. And Alaska is a big state. And as Jay was saying, the respect that you have for different areas of the state, if you are scheduled to go to Kodiak, but you also are scheduled to go to Barrow or Ketchikan and also Anchorage, do we need 3 debates in a week? It was a good campaign. I think the voters have spoken very clearly, and now it's time to move into governing.
Well, when Governor Walker withdrew from the race, we certainly saw how that impacted the Democratic candidate, Mark Begich. How do you think that impacted Dunleavy's race?
Well, I didn't notice that he changed, aside from not talking much about Walker personally. He was talking about the record and what difference he would make. So he just shifted the contrast to what Mark Begich was saying he was going to do with what Mike Dunleavy said he was going to do. And that's what you do in the election. Jay and I, on different teams, you make your case, you put your candidates out there. You have some victories and some losses, and we both have things to look at that we're happy with. We're a little bit happier, and we thank the Alaskan voter for choosing the Republican team.
Well, of course, on the Democratic side, there was a lot of talk between Mark Begich and Governor Walker about potentially teaming up or one of them dropping out. Do you think things might have gone differently if Governor Walker had perhaps gotten out of the race sooner?
Oh, listen, you can go back and point to any number of things like Tuckerman said. I don't necessarily believe there's one thing that hinges that this campaign hinged on. Here's what I do know, that the summer was a long slog for everybody. It was a three-way race for so long. When it became a two-way race, the enthusiasm gap, at least on our side, changed dramatically. I'm glad we had Mark Begich running because very few people could take advantage of that opportunity to sort of galvanize a base of people and make this a real campaign with just 2.5 weeks to go. And those things matter, but decisions play out over a number of months or weeks, and you can't really go back and second guess it. And we lined up, we did the best we could, and you sort of look ahead for the next, in our game, you look ahead for the next election cycle, and for that, we have municipal elections coming up. So that's sort of how this works. Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not happy, but it's also you did the best you could, and that's what I think we can get to. What gets us, at least got me up this morning very early and keeps me going through the day.
Well, thank you both so much for being here. And as Tuckerman mentioned, it appears we have a bit of a red wave here in Alaska. Not only the seat for governor, but House and Senate leadership appears to swing Republican this time around. We'll, of course, be following those unofficial results and keep you updated. And before we go to break, our election coverage continues. Here's a final look at House races across Alaska.